Have you ever felt like you're learning more and more, yet mastering nothing? You've read the books, taken the courses, watched every productivity guru tell you what to do, how to think, how to win, but still, deep down, you know something's missing. Most men are drowning in information but starving for transformation. They try to learn 10 skills at once, start 5 businesses, switch workouts every other week, and the result? They become experts in starting and masters of nothing. Here's the uncomfortable truth. The reason most men fail isn't because they're lazy. It's because they were never taught how to learn like a warrior. They were taught to chase hacks, to collect techniques, to skip steps. But in feudal Japan, there was a path walked only by the most disciplined. A path so powerful that it forged farmers into masters. A path that didn't just teach skill, but rewired identity. That path is called Shuhari. And once you understand it, you'll stop being the man who constantly resets, who always starts over, who has one foot in 1,000 doors and never walks through any of them. You'll become the man who finishes, the man who masters, the man whose every action sharpens the blade of identity. Because Shuhari is not a philosophy, it is a weapon, a framework that has been buried under centuries of noise, now ready to be unearthed by those who are done with mediocrity. And if you're here still listening, it means you're ready. Ready to stop being the almost man. Ready to stop saying next time. Ready to walk the path that begins with surrender and ends with mastery. But before I show you the first step on that path, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment below. What is the one skill you refuse to die without mastering? That answer will be your commitment. And this video will be the fire that burns away every excuse you've used until now. Shuhari. 3 syllables that hold the key to every mastery path the modern world has forgotten. Shu, obey. Ha, break. Ri, transcend. At first glance, it sounds simple. 3 steps, a logical progression. But behind these words lies an invisible war. Between the ego and the path. Between the illusion of knowledge and the reality of mastery. You see, in the West, we obsess over shortcuts. We glorify innovation. We want to leap straight to the top of the mountain, skip the climb, skip the fall, skip the scars. But the samurai knew better. They knew that to master the sword, you first had to master obedience. In the Shu phase, the apprentice repeats, not once, not twice, thousands of times. The same stance, the same breath, the same kata, over and over, until the body moves without thought, until the ego dies, in the fire of repetition. Only when the form is engraved into muscle and mind do they earn the right to break it. That's Ha. Ha is rebellion, but it is earned rebellion. A rebellion born from deep understanding, not arrogance. The warrior begins to question, to innovate, to see beyond the surface of the technique. They combine principles, adapt styles, forge their own way. Then finally comes Ri, transcendence. No more rules, no more form. The technique dissolves. The warrior becomes the weapon. There is no thought, only action. No self, only flow. This is the realm where mastery lives. And here's what modern neuroscience is now proving. The Shuhari model doesn't just apply to martial arts. It mirrors the way your brain actually learns and masters any skill, from language to music to leadership. In the Shu stage, repetition triggers myelination, insulating the neural pathways with every cycle. It's slow, it's painful, but it builds the foundation. In Ha, the prefrontal cortex starts analyzing patterns, abstracting, creating new connections. And in Ri, the brain shifts into what cognitive scientists call unconscious competence. The flow state, where performance becomes effortless. But here's the tragedy. Most men today live and die in Shu, but without ever submitting. They skip steps, they dabble, they change paths the moment it gets boring. They read 10 books but master none. They switch routines weekly. They pretend to be evolving when really they're just restarting the same cycle of failure again and again. Because obedience offends the modern ego. And that's exactly why Shuhari is so dangerous to mediocrity. It forces you to kneel, to be broken, to let go of being interesting so you can finally become effective. But this is not just theory. This is the exact path one man took from aimless learning to true transformation. His name was Yamato, and his story begins in the shadows, where every master's journey always begins. Chapter 1. The Pain. Yamato was a boy of silence, not because he was shy, but because words had betrayed him too many times. He'd promised his father he'd train every morning. He quit after a week. He told his younger brother he'd build a wooden dojo in the forest. It rotted half-finished in the rain. He swore to himself again and again that this time would be different. But every vow became another crack in the mirror of his identity. By 17, Yamato had mastered only one thing: quitting. It wasn't for lack of desire. The fire was real. He wanted greatness, ashamed for it. But his life was a graveyard of half-finished paths. He tried swordsmanship, gave up when his hands bled. Tried calligraphy, quit after his first ink-stained failure. Tried meditation, couldn't sit still for 3 days. And each time, he'd craft a beautiful excuse. My teacher was too harsh. The method doesn't fit my style. I need to try something new. But the truth was simpler, colder. Yamato was addicted to beginnings. Starting gave him a rush, a sense of progress, a feeling of control. But as soon as the path demanded obedience, silence, or suffering, he ran. He was not alone. In the village, men praised versatility. They switched trades like shirts. 1 week a blacksmith, the next a herbalist, then a monk. Always searching, never staying. But Yamato saw something different one morning. It was raining. Thick, cold, heavy rain. The kind that makes even the farmers stay indoors. Yet at the edge of the bamboo forest, one figure stood, unmoving. It was the old calligraphy master. Bent with age, spine curved like a hook. Yet there he was, painting strokes into the mud with his walking stick. Yamato watched, confused. What was the point? The lines would vanish. The mud would swallow every trace. He approached and asked, "Why do it if the earth erases it?" The master didn't turn, didn't speak, just drew another stroke. Then, finally, without looking, "The practice is not for the paper." Then silence again. That sentence lodged in Yamato's brain like a splinter. That night, he stared at the ceiling and asked himself a question he had avoided for years. What if mastery was never about results? What if I'd been measuring progress by the wrong metrics? He felt sick, because he knew. His entire life was built on escaping boredom, avoiding failure, seeking novelty. But nothing had changed. Not his skill, not his spirit. He was a man of movement, going nowhere. The next morning, Yamato made a decision. He would find someone, anyone, who could show him a real path. Not a new skill, not a new method. A path. One that he couldn't talk his way out of. One that would destroy him if he wavered. He would stop chasing knowledge and start submitting to the way. That decision would lead him into the mountains, into the dojo of a man who had buried more students than he had accepted. A man who lived by a single code: obey or leave. Chapter 2. The Turning Point. The master's name was Araki. No one knew his age. Some said he was born during a war and had never stopped training since. Others claimed he once cut down 3 men in a single movement and swore off violence that same day. All Yamato knew was that Araki lived alone, high in the Pine Mountains, and accepted only one student every 3 years. Yamato climbed the mountain barefoot. He brought no gift, no letter, no grand story, only his shame and a silent request: "Break me, so I may be rebuilt." When he arrived at the gate, Araki was sweeping pine needles. He didn't look up. He didn't ask Yamato's name, only said, "Stay 3 days. If you disobey once, leave. If you speak before spoken to, leave. If you try to impress me, leave." Yamato nodded. He said nothing. The first day, he stood from sunrise to sunset in Seizai, kneeling while Araki trained alone. Sword, breath, bow, calligraphy, tea. Each movement exact, repeated, timed to the heartbeat of the earth. Yamato's knees screamed, his back trembled, his ego shouted, "Say something, show him your skill, prove you belong." He said nothing. The second day, Araki handed him a wooden broom and pointed to the stone path. "How many thousand strokes? Count in your head. Reset if you lose track." Yamato swept, his hands blistered by stroke 300. He lost count at 620. He started again. By nightfall, he'd done it. Araki said nothing. On the third morning, the master finally spoke. "You wish to become a master, but your mind is full of noise. You seek freedom, but you fear obedience. You want to transcend form, but have never bowed to it." Yamato lowered his eyes. "I am..." Araki nodded once. Then listened. And for the first time, Yamato heard the word that would redefine his life. Shuhari. 3 phases. 3 deaths, 1 rebirth. In Shu, you die to your ego. You obey without question. You copy your master's form until your body becomes the memory. In Ha, you die to your certainty. You begin to question, not from pride but from precision. You break form, not to be different, but to be true. In Ri, you die to yourself. The form disappears. The mind disappears. There is only the way, and you become it. Yamato said nothing, but something inside him cracked. This was not a new technique. This was a funeral. The death of the man he used to be. Araki continued. "You will learn nothing new for the next 3 months. Only stand, breathe, and bow. You will speak only when I speak. You will question nothing. You will not journal. You will not compare. You will repeat. If you cannot do this, leave now." Yamato bowed, and so began the Shu, the ego death stage. For 90 days he copied Araki's breath, his walk, his writing strokes, each movement repeated until time dissolved. He was not allowed to think, only imitate. The modern world would call it robotic, but what Yamato discovered was that in losing choice, he found peace. No decision, no distraction, no doubt. Only presence. And slowly, painfully, the noise in his head quieted. His movements became fluid. His mind still. Until one day, Araki gave him a task without instruction. Draw a circle. Yamato hesitated for the first time. He had always obeyed. Now, he had to act. He drew the circle. Araki looked at it and smiled. "I has begun." Chapter 3. The Transformation. Ha is the most dangerous stage, because it looks like freedom, but it is a trap. Most men who reach this point confuse rebellion with transcendence. They begin to change too soon. They break form before it's fully absorbed. They chase novelty, not truth. But Araki was merciless. "Your only right to break is earned through depth," he warned. "If you can't explain why you're deviating, down to the breath, then you're not breaking, you're escaping." So Ha began with a paradox. Yamato was told to break form, but first he had to prove he understood it. Araki began challenging him in strange ways. One morning, he taught Yamato a strike, slow, precise, deliberate. Then the next day, he demanded it done blindfolded, then with the opposite hand, then without movement, just imagining the strike perfectly, over and over. Each variation forced Yamato to confront his patterns. He realized he had been relying on sight, on rhythm, on external anchors. But mastery lived beyond senses. Araki would ask questions mid-matcha. "Where is your center of gravity? What muscle initiates this movement? What angle does your foot turn? Every mistake was punished with silence. No correction, no repetition. Just the weight of not knowing. That was the lesson. In Ha, uncertainty is the dojo. Yamato began journaling again, not thoughts, but breakdowns. He sketched every movement, wrote every angle, not from obsession, but from reverence. He no longer trained for Araki's approval. He trained to understand. And slowly, the walls cracked. Yamato started adjusting forms on his own. He lowered a stance by 2 inches. More stability. He shifted his inhale before a strike. More flow. He swapped one kata's ending for another's opening. Seamless continuity. Araki said nothing. Until one day, after Yamato improvised a complete sequence, he simply nodded. Now, re-watches you. That night, Yamato couldn't sleep. He remembered the first time he picked up a wooden sword, clumsy, full of ego. And now, years later, the weapon felt like an extension of his nervous system. But more than the sword, it was his mind. He no longer asked, "What's the right move?" He felt it. He no longer hesitated before acting. He moved and reflected after. The questions had been replaced by sensation, by presence. Ri was near, but Ri could not be chosen. It had to take you. And that moment came not in battle, but in stillness. Yamato was preparing tea, a daily ritual. He lifted the kettle, poured, breathed, and in that instant, he noticed something. There was no him doing it, no internal monologue, no evaluation, just action, flawless, fluid, free. He stared at the steam rising, and for the first time in his life he understood. He was not performing the way. He was the way. Ri had arrived, not with fireworks, but with silence. And he knew. This was no longer practice. This was life. Most men will never get here. They'll quit during Shu because repetition feels humiliating. They'll skip Ha because breaking rules feels sexier than understanding them. And they'll never touch Ri because transcendence can't be hacked. It can only be lived. But Yamato's story is not about talent. It's not about destiny. It's about obedience to a system that rewired his brain, not with hacks, but with humility. Neuroscience now confirms what ancient masters already knew. That repetition restructures neurons, that focus reshapes identity, that the brain, when trained in silence and discipline, becomes a weapon. Yamato didn't become powerful because he learned more. He became powerful because he unlearned everything that made him weak. He stopped asking, "What's the best method?" He asked, "What method am I willing to die to master?" That is the spirit of Shuhari. It demands your death 3 times. First, your ego. Then your certainty. Finally, yourself. Most will turn back. But you? You made it to the end. Which means one thing. Something inside you is ready to evolve. So here is your challenge. Do not let this be just another video, just another idea, just another ghost in your mental archive. Take one skill, just one, and commit to walking the path of Shuhari. Shu. Pick one master, one book, one form, and obey for 90 days. No deviation, no skipping, just obedience. After obedience, break with reason, adapt, combine, create, let go, become. And here is your public vow. In the comments below, write, "I choose, insert your skill, I begin my Shu today." No more starting over. No more resets. No more chasing dopamine disguised as discipline. This is the path. The mountain has been waiting. Now walk